Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show and definitely another exciting guest. If you recognize this beautiful woman's face, then that means you listened to the first episode of a truly remarkable story. And she's back for part 2, the conclusion of resilience, of definitely that beast mindset. Without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Miss Bonnie Roberts. Bonnie, what's up?
What's up? Thank you so much for having me back. I appreciate it.
Part 1 was really, really good. You talked about a young girl turning into a woman, dealing with tons of different obstacles along the way, from being defiant to religious narcissism to being coerced into being married at a young age, a biracial son. I mean, definitely some trials and let's call it tribulations. But more importantly, part 2 is more about a still unsolved part of your life that still haunts you to this day. But before we go down there, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are for those that didn't get a chance to listen to episode 1.
Yeah, my name is Bonnie Roberts. I have 3 kids. I'm a single mom. My son is 19. My 2 daughters are 14 and 12. I'm an entrepreneur. I fired my boss at the age of 38. And honestly, I use what I have overcome to enlighten and help other broken people, because let's be real, I was broken. I was broken very deeply with all of the trials and tribulations that's happened in my life. I know that is to help other broken people better their lives, to move forward, to deal through the trauma, just like I have been able to.
You used the word broken, and that's a word that we hear and that we see often, but more importantly, when you hear that word broken, it's usually followed by the word hopelessness. But you've taken all of these words and basically turned them into something positive. I almost call it a resurrection into that beast mindset. Let's go right into part 2. Those that want to catch up, they can listen to part 1, and I do encourage them to listen to part 1, but 30 minutes, we need to get deep into this. So let's start here. Your biological mom was 16 years old, was, let's call it what it is, brutally murdered. So much so that her body wasn't found till much, much later, totally decomposed, ear slit, cut throat. When did you realize that this was your biological mom? Because you came from foster care to being adopted. Explain when your mother was introduced to you, your biological mom.
Yeah, absolutely. I was 5 years old. I always had these questions, this big question mark within me. Okay, I see my dad, I see my mother. I look like neither of them. And here are my siblings. I don't look like any of them. And the big question was why? Why don't I look like any of you guys? Most of you have green eyes or blue eyes, and you all have dark hair, and I have blonde hair and brown eyes. Like, what's going on here? I didn't even look like my nieces and nephews. And so I went to snoop in my parents' room and I went in their dresser and I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, I found this photo album. And I went in there, to my surprise, it was my baby photo album. And I'm going through, each page, and the first page had this photo of this beautiful baby. She's sitting up. She's probably maybe 9, 10 months old, and it's a vintage looking photo. So it looks identical to me, but I know it's not me, right? And I'm like, okay. And then I'm, turning the page, and I see the next page, and it's this baby and this family. It's 2 adults, and I believe it was 2 or 3 children, and it's a photo, and there's a card next to it saying happy birthday, and I'm reading the words, and it's to me. And it at the end it says, love your foster family. Foster family? Mm-hmm. And then I'm seeing photos of me in the incubator with tubes going through my nose, and oxygen mask, and all of these tubes going in and out of me, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, obviously this is me. And, I'm looking at more things, and immediately I knew that my parents that say that I'm their miracle baby aren't really my parents, and that putting 2 and 2 together, that I was adopted. And so I right there felt betrayed. I felt lied to. I felt like, oh my goodness, I've been calling these people my parents, but I don't understand, why wouldn't they tell me the truth? So I take the photo album out to my mother, and I'm like, what's this? And she's like, sit down. And her face just it looked like the life just sucked right out of her. And she went on to explaining that, that I was adopted. They were my great aunt and uncle, that my biological mother was murdered. And she explained, her story, which was most of my family's story, that, I was released from the hospital. My mom was excited biological mom was excited because, I was a premature baby. And so, of 3 months. And so I was in the hospital for 3 months, trying to survive, trying to build my lungs and get off these feeding tubes, these oxygen tubes, and all of this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was finally released, and my mom was excited. She wanted to celebrate. She wanted, her baby girl finally, survived through the worst of it. Because, back then, doctors weren't hopeful. They didn't even want my mother to give me a name because they didn't think I was going to make it.
How long were you with your mom? Didn't mean to cut you off. How long was you with your biological mom, according to what information that people are giving you? So she was murdered at 16 years old. She
Right.
had you at 16 years old. So if you was in the hospital for how many months? 9 months?
3 months.
3 months. Your mom really didn't have much time to cultivate a relationship or a bond.
Not at all. Not at all. Because as soon as that day or evening that I was released, that same day, my mom was taken from me. She was murdered.
You would think. Now, was your mom, according to information, was your mom a recovering addict? Or anything of that nature that could have led to the mysterious demise of her life?
No, she was not. However, my grandmother, when my biological mother took me to her home, what was allegedly viewed, what she came across was my grandmother and her guy friend was doing crack cocaine in the living room. And my mother didn't want me around that because growing up, by what I understand and was told, is that she and my aunt dealt with that, men in and out of the home. My grandmother was a prostitute. She sold herself so she could get her fix with crack cocaine and whatever else she did. And so she didn't want that type of life for me, and she wanted to leave. So by the story I've been told by most of my family is that my mother was hit over the head with a hammer, and allegedly by my grandmother, and that is, that didn't fully kill her, but it injured her tremendously, right? Yeah. And so supposedly two people, the guy that was with her and one of his friends came, disposed of her body. They realized that she wasn't fully dead, that she was just seriously injured. That's when her throat and ear was cut.
I know this may sound far-fetched, but I gotta say this. Do you think that maybe they tried to sexually assault your mom and she wasn't being a willing participant because they may have been under drugs and all this? And, that's what I'm just thinking, because how can you just do that to somebody in the household knowing that you're in there as a baby?
Right. Honestly, I don't know. I don't recall. I mean, later down the road, years down the road, when I was an adult, I did read the autopsy report. I don't recall it saying sexual assault, but when her and her sister was growing up, there was men in and out of the house, and they did sexually assault them. I mean, my mother, biological mother and aunt were in and out of foster homes themselves because my grandmother was unfit, because she chose prostitution and drugs over her own children.
Did you know this grandmother at all? Like,
yes.
Have you ever met her?
Yes, I did. I did spend time with her, but what really was weird, what I didn't understand, was my adoptive mom would always be there. Like, she would not allow me alone with my biological grandmother.
So you was allowed to be around, but it was more like supervised visitation.
Absolutely. And then, after they found my biological mother's body, my grandmother went off on the deep end. She lost her mind, really, honestly. I think because mixture of the drugs, the alcohol, the guilt of what happened to her. She was put in adult homes because she also ended up starting to have like grandma seizures, so she couldn't be alone by herself. She needed around the care medically because of that. And it all stems from everything that happened to my mom.
So when they found your mom, how old were you when they found your mom?
I was 3 months old.
You was how old?
3 months old. Well, no, sorry. My mother was found, let's see, I was released October, I don't know the date, and then November, no. I think it was October 31st on Halloween is when it was October 31st or November 1st. I don't remember the exact date, but it was the beginning of November or at the end of October when her body was found. So about 30 days later.
30 days later. And it seemed like this is a two-part question here. You're older, so I'm pretty sure you done some investigations on your own and people have come forward. But with so many people knowing what was going on, saw a 16-year-old girl with a baby, saying somebody would it would be an easy case to find who did it.
You would think. I mean, even when the investigators, because there was detectives, several of them that was on the case actively, and they even went to my grandmother's apartment, and they found a bloody rag of my mother's, but my grandmother was like, oh, she started her menstruation, so they threw that out. There was evidence in the home, but they were so careless. Exactly. And even the detective that was over the case, I mean, I don't believe he's even still, I don't think he's around anymore.
No, because it seemed like if they found her body and there was blunt force trauma, but the blunt force trauma didn't do something, I would have went back and start looking at the hammers and tools or something inside that house. Do you think because it was a drug infested neighborhood that maybe all the evidence was already contaminated because so many people were coming in and out of the house that anybody could have been the perpetrator that assaulted your mom?
Honestly, I can't answer that. I don't know. I mean, we can speculate all day long, our a narrative, but I really don't know. There's a lot of just big question marks or blank spots, so to speak, that are in the story. I mean, I have a baseline, which, I mean, it makes sense compared to the autopsy report. I mean, it lines up. But the fine-tuned questions, I have no idea. And that will never be answered.
Before your grandmother, now your grandmother is, let me make sure I'm understanding, because I hear a lot of grandmothers and so forth in this story. Your grandmother, that's your biological mom's actual mom, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, before she went off on the deep end and you got older, did you ever get a chance to sit down and talk to her and, true confessions? Hey, what really happened?
No.
You haven't had a chance to ever ask her this?
I never could. And when I was in 12th grade high school, she ended up, because she fought on and off her life she had cervical cancer, and then she ended up with a brain tumor, and that's how she passed away. So I really believe karma.
It went to the grave with her if she had any doings. Let's go back a minute. This is key. Did anybody ever tell you who your biological father was?
They told me who he was. I mean, the paper clippings also, like, all of this was in the newspaper in 1982, you guys. So you can look in Ohio, Benton County, you can pull everything up. But they say that my father's name was Paul Schaft. I don't know if that's true or not. But the state of Ohio did contact him, and he did sign off his parental rights and awarded me to the state of Ohio.
Wow. Have you ever reached out to him since?
No, I have not. Nor do I care to.
So the good part about it is that they was able to at least get your body, your mom's body recovered and give her a proper burial and stuff.
Correct.
How has this, with everything you went through from the first marriage to your second marriage to, trying to keep your religion intact, your spirituality intact, has it changed you?
Whew, that's a deep question. It's changed me a lot. I used to be, because I've always wanted to feel a part or be included, because even when, I'm thankful that I was adopted and they raised me as best as they knew how. I still felt a missing piece of me. I always felt like the outsider. And the reason why is because, my adoptive mother always wanted to have, I would say, peace in the house. And so what that means is she would a lot of times, go with what the family wanted, my niece mainly, giving her what she wanted, and then really ignoring my feelings, how that would make me feel, or stopping, taking a moment and seeing, okay, what does Bonnie want? Or how does this make Bonnie feel? Like, I didn't feel like she cared about that. All she wanted was to make my niece happy, but at the end results, I wasn't being happy, and I'm supposed to be her daughter, not her granddaughter. And what I mean by that, even birthdays, my niece would a lot of times celebrate on my birthday because she's a month and 25 days younger than I am. We're that close in age. We're the same age. But my birthday, I was always having to share with her, or, Christmas, like she was upset because, oh, well, why is Bonnie getting, what the children are getting opposed to what I'm getting because I'm a granddaughter? Well, instead of my mom saying, look, no, she's my daughter, she's not my grandchild, this is why, or because I've chose it. I mean, she didn't really need an explanation, but she chose to do to appease my niece, right? Which made me feel some type of way. Let's be honest. I'm supposed to be your daughter. You adopted me, and I'm grateful for that. But why? Why go through all of that to adopt me and to intentionally make me feel like I'm a lesser of a person? I'm not as valuable, or, I'm not as important as my niece. That's how I felt growing up my whole life.
Did you ever bring this up to her?
I did.
What was her response?
I did. I believe I was 19, 20. And I shared with her like how it made me feel. And, she did her deflecting, crying moment, and I didn't really get an answer. All she said was, I just wanted peace. I just wanted peace. And that's really the answer she gave me. And okay, to me, that's just excuses. That's justification. It's not an answer.
Do you wish sometime when you think about it, do you begin to weigh the options? Like, okay, you provided the imitation of life, which means you stepped into a role. I appreciate that. But you didn't really do the role. You know what I mean? Just because you put a roof over my head and, clothes on my back and stuff, you wasn't emotionally there. You was financially there. So my question to you is, now that you have done a lot of self-reflection, do you ever ask yourself, okay, despite everything that I went through, the attachment of motherly love has been taken away from you now twice? Do you think that maybe if you had went in the foster care, things might have been different? Do you kind of weigh the two options, because which one would have been better? You don't know what you would have got if you stayed in the foster system. However, they adopted you, and you didn't you have to compete for love and attention with a young girl who's your family, who, just call it what it is, she's not even mature enough to understand what's going on. And then, more importantly, did they even explain to her what's going on so she can at least try to process it?
Oh, she knew I was her aunt, but I mean, they pushed us into sisters. I even remember photos of us looking like twins. She had dark hair and brown eyes. I had blonde hair my whole life, brown eyes. We looked nothing alike. We didn't even resemble a little bit. But we were always dressed like identical twins. Even when I think we were almost 3 years old. Or it was a 3-year-old photo. I don't remember. I think it was photos for our birthday, because again, they're so close and close together. But my foster family were going to adopt me, actually, and my great aunt and uncle, my adoptive parents, stopped it. And that's when they made the decision that we're going to adopt her instead. Which she went behind my entire family's back, because my other family, the other ones didn't want me to be in the family. They wanted me to have a fresh life. They wanted me to not know about what happened to my mom, my biological mom. There was a division when my great aunt and uncle adopted me, because of how it went about, because they did it behind everybody's back.
I know you got to ask your question. Do you think it was money driven? I mean, you now do get money if you're in that situation. You know what I mean? People do things that you'd be surprised at some of the shit that people do. And now that you're older, does that thought even cross your mind that money became the root of all evil versus really stepping up to do what they said they were going to do?
That I don't know. I don't know if it was or not. I mean, it's definitely crossed my mind. Just like it's crossed my mind, how would have my life been if my real mom would have never been murdered? Or how would have my life been different if, my foster family ended up adopting me? Because they looked loving. They looked like they wanted me in their lives. I mean, that's what the pictures portray, but pictures can be deceiving too. So you have all of these questions, but at the same time, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole of what if.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So yeah. This was the cards or life that I was dealt with, and you have to make the best of it.
That was beautifully said too. Now, so much stuff. How do you process everything? You've gone through some changes with marriages and relationships. You now have 2 beautiful daughters. You got a son. I mean, how do you keep mentally focused to make sure that these challenges don't handicap you to where you see this affecting your children? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. God. A lot of time, prayer, a lot of quiet time with God, allowing myself to heal, and acknowledging where I was broken, and allowing Him to come in and do spiritual surgery on my heart, in my soul, and the trauma that I've gone through, that I've endured. Because let's be real, I don't know if I would be here if it wasn't for Him, because the last straw for me was when my kids were taken away. I had lost my adoptive parents. I have lost my siblings. At that point, I was an orphan at 30 years old, or 32. And all I lived for at that point was for my kids, and for them to be taken away like they was just, to me, that was the point of living.
How did your kids get taken away, for the viewers who didn't listen to the first episode? Because this is a very deep moment in your life, a changing moment. But how were they removed from you, and what was that situation?
Well, my daughter's father, was threatening to kill us. He verbally said multiple times, "I'm going to kill you guys. I'm going to kill you guys." So I had to take it seriously. And so I wanted a divorce. I told him I want a divorce. And, he even told me, "Oh, you'll be nothing without me." And, he was telling the girls, "Oh, your mom doesn't want me with you." And just getting them to cry. I mean, they were so young. Kaylee, my oldest daughter, was 3, and my youngest, or 2.5, and then my youngest was 1.5. I mean, they're so close in age, like 23 months apart. But what happened was, there was a false report my son's grandmother had put, and it was a domino effect, basically. She put that false report in. At this time, fast forwarding, I asked for a divorce. I had to put a restraining order against my daughter's father, because I had to take serious that he made threats that he was going to kill us. And so I did that, and he stopped paying the mortgage. I wasn't allowed to work at the time because we, were in this church. For me, it was over 10 years. For him, it was over 22, I think, or 21 years. And, the rule was a woman is supposed to stay at home if they're married. They're the keeper of the house. They're not allowed to work. They're basically the man's slave. And so he stopped paying the mortgage. And when that report came in, me and my kids were homeless. And so I found he wasn't my second husband at the time, but we ended up getting married. He was the only one I really had to even offer a roof over our heads, because, mind you, the church, we've already left the church, months ago. So all of those people that I devoted my life to for over 10 years turned their backs on me. I was literally banned from the church. Like, they weren't allowed, discommunicated, or excommunicated is the word they use. They couldn't call me. If I call them, they're not really supposed to talk to me.
A church organization that everybody would know about, Latter-day Saints, Christians. What kind of organization is this that turned their back on you after you've been there for so long?
It's called New Testament Christian Church of America.
Wow. Now, a false report is provided, but you lose the kids because you don't have a safe place for your children, nowhere for them to live. Is that why they were removed?
So, yes and no. So, ultimately, yes, but it's more than just that. So what happened was, when the investigation started, I was staying at this gentleman's home, soon to be my second husband, with his 2 kids. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, not really enough room for us, but It's either staying with this person that I really don't know or being on the streets. Who, I mean, those are my options. These are my choices to pick. So of course, I'm going to put a roof over my kids' head because I'm not working still. I'm still trying to find a job.
So you move
But
in with a dude you hardly know.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
kind
I
of
mean,
like,
we knew each other for 3 months. I don't consider that really knowing each other.
yeah, but isn't that kind of dangerous to put your kids in that situation?
Well, I mean, what's more dangerous? Living on the streets with a, 1, 3, and 8-year old, or
Did he put you out already?
the house was already in foreclosure. It was being auctioned. So I had to vacate the house.
I mean, what about? I'm just taking my mind down to what the viewers may be asking. So don't. I'm not trying to be combative or anything like that. But what about women's shelters? I mean, you have kids, so there should be systems set up for individuals that are going through this domestic situation, especially since you have children.
Right. No, I asked CPS to help me. Can you give me a roof over my head? Help me give me resources. And at that time, they just didn't have any resources. They would rather break up a family than to help me put a roof over our head. I was willing to do that. I was willing to. I wanted to do whatever it took to keep my kids, but they were so gung ho on splitting us up than to really find a solution, help me with the solution.
Did you have a restraining order against your husband that you filed that you told him you was getting a divorce?
Yes, I did.
And then because of that, I'm catching everybody up to speed. And then he decided not to pay the mortgage on the house.
Right.
But that has to, in order to do a foreclosure or whatever, I don't know how that stuff works. Isn't it that takes quite some time? So what were you doing in between that, knowing that, you know, he's not going to pay the rent? I mean, now you do have to go out and get a job. So I mean, I'm just asking because I'm thinking what the viewers may be asking.
Right,
It takes a while for foreclosures to go into place, is what I mean. So if you filed a restraining order and you know he was going to be passive aggressive and not pay the bills and whatever, I mean, could you not get a job because the community is so tight knit with the church organizations that because you became excommunicated, it just means don't even give you a job? Is that how the community is that you was living in?
No. What happened was I wasn't working. I hadn't worked for 8 years. And so I was applying for jobs. I was taking odds and ends jobs that, were temps and so on and so forth. But that was enough to just really, because I had to pay daycare, right? Because I couldn't get any resources from the state because I was still legally married. So it
So everything was
disqualified
based on
me.
his income. Still.
Yep, because it disqualified me for even food assistance, housing assistance, everything that that they make available to you. But because we were still married, I wasn't able to do any of that. And then not only that, but during this time, trying to find a job, a lot of places, let's be real, didn't want me because of that 8-year gap. They didn't want to risk it, and they ask you, well, why is there this 8-year gap? And, you have to be honest. You have to tell them, well, I was married and, I stayed home and raised children. And people don't want to deal with that because to them, let's be real, it's a liability.
What about your son? We hear about your daughters. What was he going through during this transition? Was he in the process of being taken away as well? Because he's a
Yes.
lot older.
Right. He's 8 years old, I believe, 8 or 9 at the time that all of this happened. He unfortunately had to go to a foster home. He was there for about 2 years.
Wow. Your story is truly one that I'm pretty sure there's somebody else that went through this same stuff. And I'm more concerned about the children at this point now. You know, when do you really start putting the focal point on them? Now that all this is gone, like what is their mindset like now? You definitely have bounced back and set numbers in your career, but let's talk about this impact. I think this is something that we don't do when it comes to our own demise. We fail to realize what impact did it have on the children, because those same impacts had consequences on you when you heard about your mom, when you know all these different, it's almost like a domino effect. So what have you done differently as it relates to your children and your son to make sure that they don't have that domino effect like what you had?
Well, I try and show them, because to me, words means nothing. Words are just words.
Right.
It's all about actions, by showing. I show them that I'm always available. I'm always there for them. And, I have to be honest that, my children are angry. They are confused. They don't understand why in their mind, I chose this stranger over them, and it wasn't true. It's not that I chose this person over them. It was, I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to get my kids back. I'm trying to keep a roof over my head and have a roof over their head, because if I'm homeless, then it's going to be a longer process for me to even get my kids back. That's my mindset. So I have to stay with this person so that I can better my life, which took time. It didn't happen overnight. I wish I could have just, snapped my fingers and voila, or wave a magic wand and everything be done.
You said
But
something. You said I had to stay with this person. You rolled the dice and you did that to keep a roof over him. But did you love him? Did this guy know that he was a means to no end?
I eventually fell in love with him. And he's honestly the only person that I have fell in love with. But I settled, like I said in the first, the part one, because I saw so many red flags, but I was so broken, so at wit's end on everything. Like I wanted it over. I even tried to end my life, when my kids were taken away. But back to my kids, I know that they're angry. I know that even my daughters, things that have been happening for the last 3 years, which I can't disclose, but I've been fighting for sole custody of them because of things that has been happening under their dad's lack of parenting, to say the least. But I've enforced the courts to have them get therapy and stuff like that, so that's helping them. But there's still this, well, mom says this, dad says this, dad's family says this, because they're all negative things that him and his family say about me. But I always have to be open-minded and tread lightly, because I'm not here to, bash my daughter's father or his family or anything like that. That's not who I am. Even though I could very much well do that, but that's not who I am. And I don't.
Do you get to see your children now?
I do. My daughter.
Is it supervised visits?
No. They come here to North Carolina. I see them on their breaks. And I even had to fight him on that, because he didn't want, he was like, oh, the parenting plan says it has to be in Ohio. Well, you chose to move to North Carolina, so, if you want to see your daughters, you need to come to Ohio. Well, that's not easy to do. I mean, it costs a lot of money. I wasn't able to stay, with them at his parents' house. They weren't going to allow that, so I could visit. I had to get a hotel, which means, getting food, which means all of this stuff, this extra expenses, which I couldn't afford at the time, but it's an extra expense that if, I keep going there, that's, $1,500 to $2,000 just for a weekend.
How old are your daughters now?
12 and 14.
Wouldn't it be, I'm just playing, what if? I get what he's saying. If you move, it's really, the court system is crazy. You choose to move to North Carolina. But let's look at the end game here. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to cultivate the complete situation by being closer to your children in Ohio, to both financially and to be a source of resources for your daughters? Because you said something about your own life. You didn't have the resources, so you settled. So knowing who he is, the father, because you're not here to bash him, but you know your story better than anybody. It seemed like if I got a situation that my child is in, knowing that that's not the best situation for them, I think I'm going to be a little bit closer to home base, just in case, because what's the old saying? He's not going to change. It's just, it's going to get worse. And if your children are in harm's way and you see the repeated domino effect, I think it might be better served if you was closer to them when if the time ever came to be a 911 for them. Does that make any sense? Have you thought about that?
It does, and I have. But I have to think as a mother, and I have to look at the whole picture as a whole.
What is the whole picture as a whole for you? I'm pretty sure the viewers would like to hear that.
What that means is the fact that, okay, if I go there, and is that really going to stop what is going on? The answer is no. They really need to be away from the entire environment because it's toxic. The things that are happening are very alarming. And again, I'm not going to disclose everything because of their privacy, their innocence, and it court related. So I have to protect myself on disclosing that information. But the simple answer is they need to be away from the situation entirely.
But how do you fight a case when you're in two different jurisdictions? The jurisdictions are very reluctant to overturn other jurisdictions. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to fight these allegations being on the same turf, on the same playing field when it comes to law, statutes, and and child protection services?
Yes and no. The magistrate, because this, again, it's been going on for almost 3 years. The magistrate ruled in my favor that I should have sole custody. Now, my
Magistrate in Ohio or the magistrate in North Carolina?
no, in Ohio, because it has to be where
The children reside.
the courts where the children resides.
Mm-hmm.
So the magistrate ruled in my favor. He opposed or appealed, right? Or the term is objected, not appeal. And then we went to trial again for the second time. I went in front of the trial judge. The trial judge totally ignored all of the evidence, which was I believe it was over 1,000 pages of proof of documentation showing all of these things, and she ruled in his favor. So then I went to appellate court. I appealed it, and the appellate judges decided that, oh, well, we're going to give him a second chance, because right before trial, the first trial with the magistrate, what was it? 4 days, I believe it was, or 14 days. Either way, it was right before the trial, and he just happened to start following what the rule was or what the court order was, even back in November. So from November to, April, May, when we had trial, he all of a sudden, just days leading up to it, I'm gonna now, follow what the interim court order says. It was a tactic. I mean, come on. Anybody would see that.
That's what I mean. If you're dealing with, I know this is probably a question that the viewers would say, nobody knows your opponent better than you. Nobody knows your opponent better than you. So I believe me, my hat's off to you. I've gone through this before, so I know what you're saying. But so let's go here before we wrap up. What's your end game here? Because at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about your quest to get your children back, understanding what you went through, and not having it repeat itself. You want to be the resource for your children, as well as helping make sure that your 19-year-old recovers as well. Because let's get real, you don't want your children to think you were the villain and that you really wasn't there, because you're dealing with what's the word I want to use? I don't want to use narcissistic behavior, but patterns that aren't healthy. Let's put it like that.
Toxic patterns.
I'm not even going to use the word toxic. I'm going to just say patterns that are not becoming of the best interest of the child and what is in the best interest of the development from both parents. In other words, one of you guys has to step up and do what's right. And that may be something that's going back into the battlefield and being on turf, because if he's already showing you his hands and his exposures, and all of a sudden he wants to wait a few days to come there, at the end of the day, your kids are going to need you a lot quicker than what you might think.
Right. Well, honestly, I know this is cliche and whatever, but I've had to put it in God's hands and just asking him to show me what to do. Because I have to take my emotions out of it. Being a mother, being a mama bear on top of that, of course, you want to protect your kids at all costs. And I do whatever I can. But at this point, my hands are tied when it comes to the judicial system because I did what I could, right? As far as relocating, yeah, I have given it some thought, and I'm just waiting to see what I need to do, because if I go, and you have to look at it as a bigger picture, if I go, then relocating to a different state or whatever is going to be almost impossible, because he has to agree to it. You get what I'm saying?
He has to agree to you moving back to Ohio to be closer to your kids?
No, if we were to relocate from Ohio, once, I got sole custody of them, I would have to put in the courts, okay, where me and the kids are going to relocate to whatever state, right? Because let's keep in mind the toxic behaviors, the unsupervised, the unstructured parenting is happening still, but they really do need to be out of that situation, out of that environment. The children in those schools, the things that they say, the things they do, they go on these unmonitored websites, okay, and to talk to strangers, videos recording, and you can I'll spare the details, but you can connect the dots and I have proof of these things, right? So they really do need to be out of that environment completely.
Let me say thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. Not once, but twice. I do encourage you guys to make sure you watch the first episode to understand a little bit about, you've gone through so much. I'm sorry for the loss of your mom at such a young age. She birthed a beautiful daughter who has the resilience to overcome. Let's call it what it is. You're overcoming. It's going to take some time, but it will happen. If you had to leave the viewers with your journey so far and your journey in the future, I know it's hard to see, but you see it. What would you tell them? What keeps you going? What's that beast mindset?
I use my pain, the trauma, the everything I've gone through as fuel to push me to go forward, because I've been through so much. If I could get through that, then anything else is just nothing. Me and my kids have been through so much that's the fuel I use to keep going. So no matter what you've gone through, just know that God's got you and you will get through this, point blank, period.
Bonnie, thank you so much for taking time out to come on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you click like, subscribe, click that button. All it takes is one click to make a difference in somebody's life as well as your own. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another, and I do mean another, exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show.